Hello, I'm Cryss, and this is episode 11 of the Crochet Cryss podcast. My sister Lisa and I own the yarn store A Knit Sheep in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, and this is the space where I discuss building my crochet closet and learning to be my own crochet designer. So, as far as works in progress, I'm still working on the sweater that I showed you the beginning of last episode. I've gotten a little bit further, so got some inches on it now. So it's all just single crochet, and the yarn is wool-like from Michaels. And if you remember, so this piece is going to be arms all the way across the chest and down the other arm, and I'm working basically from the back armpit up over the shoulder down to the front armpit, and that's what this piece will be. So if you remember, that's not bad. I had some gauge issues. I had some issues with the stitch gauge. It didn't come out to the same gauge as my swatch, and I had to start over. So the back, each piece, back and front, is supposed to be 8 inches, and it's going to be a total of 128 rows. So the back piece and the front piece will each be 64 rows. So when I got to 32 rows, the halfway point of the back, I measured, and I was just shy of 4 inches. I was like a little bit over 3 3/4 inches, and again, no idea why, based on having measured my gauge swatch, but that's not a big deal. The fact that the row gauge is a little bit off, I can add a few rows. It's not going to be a big issue to resolve that. But again, that just means that gauge is a thing I'm really going to have to work on. It's probably an area that I'm going to struggle with a little bit as I learn to figure out gauge for myself. I realize you get a huge leg up when you're working from someone else's pattern, because they're telling you, the yarn to use, the hook to use, what stitches to use, what your stitch count should be. So it's all like baked into the cake for you. Trying to figure out gauge for yourself and make sure that you get the gauge that you want for your item to fit, regardless of the yarn you're using. That is a whole different ball of wax, and I did not anticipate that being the biggest challenge for me as I'm working on learning how to design for myself. But it is. I mean, I thought design, construction, I thought figuring out how to shape things the way I want it, I thought that would be what I struggled with. Gauge came out of left field. I'm totally surprised by this, and this is something that I'm going to have to work on, and hopefully I can find some resources to do some reading and maybe learn some tips and tricks. I've had a harder time finding resources for crochet design than I have for knitting design. I'm hoping that there's enough overlap between crochet and knitting that I can maybe read some knitting resources and still pick up some information about how to determine gauge for your own project, as opposed to working based on a gauge that you've been given. That said, I still am completely in love with this fabric. Now that I've done a few inches, you can really see the single crochet. It's beautiful. I love it. For the bodice, the part that's going to come down from the armpits, I do want a little bit of a different texture from the upper portion. So I think I might just do something as simple as doing back loop only, but still keep it single crochet, just so there's some difference in texture between the upper portion and the main body, just as a design element, because I mentioned before, I'm completely in love with the single crochet stitch, and I hope y'all aren't sick of it, because you're gonna see a lot of it. I just like to work as simply as possible, because I'm not really concerned with my crochet being kind of like an art piece. I really just want something that I can wear, and my aesthetic in terms of the clothes that I buy at stores still tends to be very classic, very simple. So now that I'm designing for myself, I'm really having to see how my aesthetic is going to impact the things I choose to make, because I'm no longer making things based on someone else's aesthetic. So we'll see if I grow beyond the single crochet stitch, but for now it's totally working for me. So the wool like, if you remember, is 678 yards, I believe, per skein. That's a whole lot of yarn, but just this part that I've done, I think this here is 34 rows now. It's eaten up almost a whole skein. I don't think one skein will give me the full 8 inches, so it's going to take probably 2 and some change to do the front and the back, and that's fine, because if you remember, I have a lot of wool like. I mean, just like a lot of wool like. And this is what happens to my skein when I don't use a yarn cozy. And I have one, and I don't know why I didn't use it. And this is just a reminder for me to always use my yarn cozy. Otherwise, terrible things happen to your yarn. In fact, I think I'm going to pick up a couple of them. We have, in the store, we're selling yarn cozies from a brand called Hope Knit Yarn. And they're fantastic. I love them. So I'm going to snatch a couple more from inventory, just so that if I'm working with different colors, every skein I use will have a yarn cozy on it, so this doesn't happen. So that's it for my work in progress. I did go to Joann, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, but my sister Lisa, she absolutely loves Joann, and she doesn't even like want anything when we go there, but she's always like, hey, can we stop at Joann? Can we stop at Joann? Because it's actually not that far from our store. So we went there, and I'm never really looking for anything, because most of the time when I went to craft stores, I was looking for yarn, and I'm not buying yarn at craft stores like I used to, obviously. So I didn't expect to really get much of anything, and give me a chance to explain. Okay, I did pick up a pattern book, and I will tell you why. Just hold on. I picked up this book, and it is oversized sweaters. These leisure arts booklets are a real weakness for me. I have a bunch of them, and at some point I'm thinking about doing some videos where I just talk about my crochet book collection, because it is sizable at this point, and I just want to talk about like what draws me to a particular design book and what I get out of them, because I feel like so many people are buying patterns digitally, and I resisted that for a long time, not because of any issues I had with technology, but I just thought of the books as like more bang for my buck. I was just getting a lot of patterns for a reasonable price. I just thought it was more cost effective than buying one pattern at a time. But I do now buy more digital patterns, because sometimes you just see something you really like. But I still think books are a really good deal. So this is by Melissa Leitman, and at this point I probably have quite a few books and patterns by Melissa Leitman. I know she also does knitting design, and she's probably more well known, I think, as a knitwear designer than as a crochet designer, but my first exposure to her was through her crochet patterns. And so this is oversized sweaters, and I'll talk about the reasons I got this, and that is because I have figured out that there's still a lot for me to learn when it comes to crochet. And I'm not just gonna like throw out all these books that I have just because I'm trying to work on designing things for myself. So I wanted to see what I could learn from various books without following the patterns row by row. Because if you take that away, if you don't follow, every single row line by line and just do exactly what the pattern says, there's still a crap ton of information in a pattern book. So I just wanted to talk about like all of the things that pattern books have to offer besides just step-by-step instruction. And for me, one of the best things is schematics. I mean, just boom. Here's your shape, here's your size, and if you're already familiar with construction like I am, if you don't need information about how to put things together, just a stack of schematics is going to be incredibly useful, because that's something that I'm still having a hard time with, figuring out what dimensions I want my finished item to be. I told you I got a great tip from one of Dora Orenstein's books. So I'm filming outside and there's just like all kinds of stuff going on. One of Dora Orenstein's books, Custom Crochet Sweaters, she said not only measure yourself, but measure garments that you like the fit of, so that you can figure out what kind of fit you want in your final garment and what kind of ease you're going to need. But I particularly like that these were oversized garments, because I don't know that I have a lot of those, but I would like to make some. And having just a general idea of what kind of dimensions I should be aiming for is going to be incredibly useful. So schematics, number one. I hate when patterns don't have schematics. I understand that there are a lot of work for designers to make, but if you don't want me to buy your pattern, don't put a schematic in it and I will overlook it. That's how useful, that's how critically important schematics are, because even if there's something, if there's a flaw in the pattern, or if there's just something that I want to change from the pattern, having that overall guideline that it should still be like this wide and this long, and here's the neck opening and here's where your shoulders are, having all of that is just really helpful, even if you just want to tweak an existing pattern. Obviously, the other thing that's very useful, and I have another book here I want to show you, because this is a Shannon Mullet-Bowlesby book, and it's called Crochet Geometry. I love Shannon Mullet-Bowlesby. He's an absolutely incredible designer, and his books are top-notch, first-rate, A+. Like, you cannot get a better pattern book than one written by Shannon Mullet-Bowlesby, or if you can, I haven't seen it. But he also does very detailed stitch diagrams for every stitch that's going to be used in a particular garment. And that's another thing that you can make use of, even if you're not following patterns row by row. It's basically, I mean, think of this as almost being its own kind of stitch dictionary, because all of the stitch patterns are going to be laid out for you. So even if you don't want to make that specific garment that you're seeing in the picture, you can use those stitch patterns to make other things. So schematics, stitch patterns. The other thing, and this is very easy to overlook, yarn. Sorry, that's my yarn pirate voice. Pattern books will have a list of all the yarns used. So if you see something and if it's just something about that yarn is just speaking to you, this book, any pattern book rather, will give you a list of all of the yarns used. And I can't find the page in the Shannon Mullet-Bowlesby book, but oh, nope, there it is, I think. Materials. So here are all the yarns that are used in this book. So anything that you really like, you can look that up online. You can find out if your local yarn store carries it, or you can find it from an online retailer, and you're going to have a great list of supplies that you can use if you're designing your own things. That is great for me because I'm still learning yarn. After all these years crocheting, I still have a ton to learn, and to learn from an experienced designer like a Melissa Leapman or a Shannon Mullet-Bowlesby, who have way more experience than I do with all kinds of different yarns, brands, fibers, weights, and all of that, to have a list of their go-to yarns, the things that they reached for when they wanted a certain kind of drape or when they wanted something to wear a certain way. Again, that's just benefiting from someone else's knowledge and experience. So even if I don't want to make the things in these books row for row for row, I'm still going to have very useful resources. And then just generally overall construction. So each of the tops in here, and I won't go through the whole book, are put together in slightly different ways. and that will just always be useful for me because I'm still learning. And I have to be honest, right now I'm kind of obsessed with sweaters. I feel like sweaters are the most efficient and effective way to really build my crochet closet, because one top can be worn with so many different bottoms that's really kind of where my focus is. So I'm trying to learn to make tops, well, tops in general, not just sweaters, but tops at every weight, tops in a lot of different styles. So everything from like a big bulky oversized cardi to a little camisole type top. That's what I want to learn to make, and I want to learn as many different ways to make them as possible, just so that there's variety in my style, so I don't feel like I'm stuck making the same kind of thing over and over again, because that's what I'm comfortable with. So having just different examples of how to construct various garments, or various versions, I should say, of the same garment, of oversized sweaters, that's another thing that is going to be incredibly useful for me. So even though I am not, strictly in love with the idea of using a pattern, you've got an experienced designer who's got a ton of information to offer. Why would I ignore that? While I still have a lot to learn, I don't, and I'm learning some of this on my own, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to start from 0. I can start from like 2 because I have all of these designers who have already put so much time and effort and who have generously shared that information with me. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that I am still I'm definitely going to still be buying crochet pattern books. I just won't necessarily be using them for step-by-step instructions, because at this point I don't necessarily need that. So I wanted to talk about yarn, of course, but specifically I wanted to talk about craft store yarn because the last couple of times I went to the craft stores, I was thinking about the fact that, this kind of stereotype exists that crocheters tend to use bulkier yarns, knitters will use finer yarns, and where that comes from. And the fact is, if you were shopping exclusively at craft stores, your options are going to be limited. Maybe that's not limited. Your choices will be informed by what's available at that store. And over the last few years, new yarns have been coming out. So I think there are more options now for people who want to use like fingering weight and sport weight yarn but are shopping at the craft stores. But that wasn't always the case. So I can say 5 years ago, when I was shopping at craft stores, I did not have the same kind of options that you might have today. And that got me thinking about how possible it would be for me to do what I'm doing now, which is really focus on making garments and not always using worsted weight yarn. How easy would it be for me today to make my garments if I was shopping only at craft stores? Because we all know one of the big differences between the craft stores and the yarn stores is price. And I like a good deal. That's never going to change. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I would still be quite cheap. I really would. There would be some things that I spent a lot on. I'd buy myself a nice house, but some things I'd still balk at paying over a certain amount, say for a pair of shoes. So I wanted to look at the options for fingering weight and sport weight yarns from craft stores, but specifically keeping in mind the desire to make garments, because not everything is suitable for a garment. So I want to show some of the yarns that I picked up, and in no particular order. I found this, and I don't know if this is new to Joanne or if it's just new to me, but this is called Fair Isle. The brand is Fair Isle and the yarn is called Harbor. And this is a sport weight yarn, and I love this color. Raspberry is always fun. And they recommend using a 4.5mm crochet hook, and I apologize because I don't remember what size hook I used for my swatch, but it wasn't 4.5. I started with 4.5, but I was like, that's too big for a sport weight yarn. That is just a bad recommendation. And I don't know what you're making if you're using a 4.5 millimeter hook for a sport weight yarn. But this is 50% cotton, 50% viscose from bamboo, and it's 321 yards in 100 grams. Pretty good deal. And let me see if I can find my receipt, and I will tell you how much it was. And so this was $4.99. So $5, 3 of these could make like a tee. Well, depending on like if it's fitted, cropped, whatever, you could probably get a summer weight t-shirt out of 2 of these. And I imagine this would be fairly comfortable to wear because it is cotton and bamboo. And so I just did a single crochet swatch to show you. It works up really nicely. It has a little bit of drape to it. It's got a great hand feel. And me personally, not only would I definitely make a garment out of this, I kind of really want some of this yarn. And I know it's absolutely ridiculous to go to a craft store and buy yarn at regular yarn store prices, at regular craft store prices, when I already have so much yarn. But this stuff's kind of calling my name. And I really, really like it. So I would say that this is a definite yes as far as garments go, and the price makes it very appealing for apparel. This is a baby yarn. This is Bernat Baby, so some of you are probably familiar with it. It bills itself as a fingering weight, so it calls itself a 1. I don't know. It's definitely a heavier fingering weight. This is 90% acrylic and 10% nylon, 50 grams and 191 yards. And they tell you to use a 3.25 millimeter hook, and I believe that is what I did when I made this swatch. Now this is a little bit stiffer. I did not, as you can tell, I didn't like block anything, so everything's curling. It's a little bit stiffer, and it feels heavier. It feels weighty. I don't think this would move nicely. So if you wanted to make something that was like a drape front cardigan, so you know, you just make a big rectangle and you just let it hang in the front, I don't think this would be a good choice. You'd have to be very specific about what you made with it. I don't know what I would make with this. The other thing to know is that because this is a baby yarn, you're gonna get baby colors. So I know there were like a lot of pastels. I remember, because I bought these a couple of weeks ago, I just didn't really care for the color selection. So I would not choose this at all for making a garment. The price is, I believe this one was also $4.99. And so it's 191 yards. So you're gonna need more of this compared to the cotton to make a garment. But like I said, it feels stiff. I don't think it would wear comfortably. And if you're wearing acrylic, look, you know what you want from acrylic is something soft as well as something easy to care for. And there are better options. I personally, I don't know that I would even use this for something for babies, unless I wouldn't make this a baby garment with this. I would make a blanket, maybe something that needs to be a little rough and tumble, something that's going to get spit up on a lot. Yes, do that. But I wouldn't even make baby garments out of it. This is yarn you use to make those toilet paper dolls. So you know, it stands up in the roll of toilet paper and has the big dress that drapes over it. That's what you do with this yarn. Oh, and this, I should tell you, the cotton, machine wash cold on gentle, and do not tumble dry. So you can machine wash this, but lay flat to dry. So the other yarns, so I have 2 more here. They're both Premier yarns. This one is Premier Serenity Sock. And let's see, it's fingering weight. It's superwash merino wool, 50% superwash merino wool, 25% rayon from bamboo, and 25% nylon, 230 yards, 50 grams. And this was Borealis. Okay, so this was $7. This was $6.99. Now, a problem I have with the sock yarns, you know, they're generally like wool and nylon. That's fine for garments. They tend to come, the ones at craft stores tend to come in some really funky colors. So I remember having some trouble choosing a color when I was looking at these in the store. But when I made my swatch, and let's see what they recommended, 3.5. I'm almost positive I sized down. I probably went down to a 3.25 for this. But when I made this swatch, I actually really like the striping pattern. How cute is that? It's not the softest yarn, but it's, I know it says it's 50% merino and 25 rayon from bamboo. I would expect this to have a little bit of a softer hand feel, and I'm surprised that it doesn't. But it's not bad. I could wear this. But these stripes, how cute is that? So I feel like this is an option. At the price, $7 a ball, if you don't have like a coupon or don't get some kind of deal. You could definitely afford, let me tell you, make a sweater for much cheaper than I made my off-road sweater, okay? So I think this would work. But the colors looked really odd to me, but when it actually played out in my swatch, I was like, you know what? That kind of works. And so you have to imagine that if you're making, say, a sweater, you know, you're going to be making something wider. So you're going to get like, one color won't make it all the way across the row. So you're going to get this really kind of cute staggered thing happening. And I could totally see that. So this is another maybe. My little trip to the craft store was a bad idea because it's putting some thoughts in my head. And so the last one I got from Joann, because I did go to all three of my local craft stores, Joann, Michael, and AC Moore. When we go to all three in the same day, my family calls it a trifecta. So I did a trifecta that day. But I'm just showing the ones from Joann right now. So this is another one from Premier Yarn, and this is Deborah Norville collection. And it is Serenity Sock Weight. And this was another one. I was very skeptical of these colors in the ball. So this is fingering weight, 50% superwash, 25 rayon from bamboo, 25 nylon, but it has a much softer feel compared to this one, and I don't know why that is, but that's okay. And so here, I don't know if you can really see that, but that is an idea of how it would work up if you were making socks, which is cute. I would totally wear that as a sock. However, this is how my swatch worked up. And I am absolutely in love with this. Don't ask me why. I'm crazy about it. I love that it's like it's heathered, it's marled, it's mottled, it's speckled. It's like doing all the things. I love how these colors are playing out. Y'all, I really like this yarn. It feels nice. It drapes well. It's got a nice light weight to it for being wool. This swatch feels heavier in my hand. It's very lightweight. I feel like this would be a really nice, comfortable sweater to wear in like fall. So I'm thinking wearing like a sweater made out of this, just a basic crew neck sweater with a little white collar of a shirt underneath peeking out and a pair of jeans, and I would feel cute as hell in this. I might actually need to get some of that. I might wait, because you know sometimes Joann does one of those sales where it's like 25% off of everything regular price. Of course, that's usually when a lot of the yarn goes on sale. But like this specific color, I think this was Borealis. This is chili. This chili like the food, not chili the noun, not chili the adjective. I love this. doing? Like, falling for this craft store yarn. I was at the store today because we're gearing up to, we open on Wednesday, and I was surrounded by yarn. I was surrounded by beautiful yarn. But this is, Gigi, if you're familiar with Gigi, if Gigi made it, she calls herself a yarn hoe. And I feel like now I get it. Because I need some of this yarn. It's ridiculous. I have, between yarn that I have access to in our store and yarn that I have access to in a closet in my house, which is ridiculous, I don't need not one single ball of yarn. But what I do need in my life is a sweater made out of this bad boy right here. So this may have to happen. But again, this is a yarn that I would recommend for garment making. So out of the 4 yarns that I showed you, my recommendations are as follow. Definite yes for Fair Isle Harbor for garment making. Definite no for Bernat Baby. Kind of a qualified yes or a maybe for Premier Serenity Sock. Depends on how important that really soft hand is to you. And another definite unqualified yes for Deborah Norville Serenity Sock from Premier Yarn, because I love it. So I think this is a good time to wrap up, especially because it is dinner time. But I'm just glad that I was able to finally get this episode filmed. Sorry that it wasn't up on Friday. I'll be working on that. As we going back to work, my schedule just went all haywire. So hopefully next week things will just be back to normal and I can just film at a set time every week. But if you're still with me, thank you very much. Apparently the rule is, like on YouTube, you're supposed to actually ask people to like and follow. I always feel weird about that because I feel like, if you want to, you will, and if you don't, you won't. But if you do like this video and you would like to, please feel free to consider liking and following, or if not, that's fine. I don't mind lurkers. But thanks for watching and stay stitching.